Our Ango theme is Making Zen Your Own for this season, and we've appreciated some of the aspects of that. The aspect I'd like to talk about tonight is spiritual authority. So this is important to give some consideration to. How do we take the Buddha's teachings that we study and practice? How do we take them? How do we hold them? How do we take the Dharma talks of our teachers, like this one? With what authority do we take them? How should we hold them? And ultimately, what is the authorization? What is the confirmation that we all seek, that you seek in your own life with respect to the Dharma? So Zen has some clear things to say about this, some clear understandings with respect to our tradition, and I want to share those. I think it's worth speaking in this time and place how certain more authoritarian structures of Dharma practice, can lend themselves to abuses of power, right? Because when we talk about spiritual authority, we're talking about power, empowerment, right? Amongst other things. And all power can be abused, and institutions, in the way that they handle power, can go awry in the way that they handle power. So we're all familiar with the institutions of the wisdom traditions that have come into America and fallen afoul of abuses of power in a variety of traditions, including Zen, of course. And we're sitting tonight in this space, in the Shambhala Center, which was subject to some of those abuses and things gone sideways in terms of power given up to the spiritual figures, the spiritual authorities, perhaps power disowned by students, power taken or denied by teachers. Without going into the details, we can appreciate how these things go awry and can cause a lot of pain and suffering. So as many of you know, we're consciously chosen to sit in this room in the Shambhala Center, which has experienced some recent repercussions around abuses of power. And with the consciousness of knowing that the group there are themselves very conscious of the lineage and Dharma that has been created, and is making great strides to clean that up and to enter into that space consciously. We've gotten a lot of fellow feeling and gratitude from the people at the Shambhala Center that our group and our Zen lineage has chosen to sit in that space. So I wanted to let everyone here know that too. We're very grateful for that. So, where there is power, there is abuse of power, and we need to be very careful about that. Zen puts a lot of emphasis on students not over-relying on teachers, not giving up their power, right? Questioning everything respectfully, respecting the authority, and I'll say more about that, but the authority of the teachers and the seniors, such as it is, but not giving away their own power in that exploration. You have to investigate every teaching that you hear, every teaching that you read, and trial it in your own heart, in your own soul, your own experience, right? See how it resonates. Some things might resonate and some things might not resonate. But you also have to be careful about making your own judgments about right and wrong about those things that don't resonate. Right? Maybe you just haven't had the experience that you can understand the perspective that's being given. It's also important to understand where the teacher or the teachings are coming from. the lineage, if you will, of the voice that you're listening to. And I'm a lineage-based teacher. My teachings come from my experience, my practice, and my life, which has been intimately shaped by my Zen teaching lineage. So you should know something of that. Many of you do. My white plum lineage, my teachers, Shishin Roshi and Shinko Roshi, and their teachers, Maizumi Roshi primarily, and then the teaching lineage, from there. There's voices and there's teachings from all of those people, and there's a lot of integrity and there's a lot of depth in that lineage. There's mistakes as well. There's consciousnesses and there's ownings, and I don't know that I can say there's disownings, but there's a lot of ownings of karma that has been created with my lineage, and I'm very proud of my lineage. But your understanding of those sources can give you a sense of what has shaped me, and that can inform how you respond to my words. So that's where my teachings come from, my life as informed by that lineage. And that's where my authority, in a sense, comes. It comes from my experience and my life as informed by those teachers. So what does that say about my teachings? What I have to say, or what anybody has to say to you? Well, none of it is an absolute truth. Right? It's all a perspective. It's all a relation of our own experience. So I just share my experience with my understandings and even my opinions. I mentioned last week, Bernie Glassman came to call the Buddha's Four Noble Truths the Four Noble Opinions. And whenever we get to putting things in words, there's a perspective at play, and there's a certain conceptual organization of relative entities or ideas. So that the relativity of anything that's verbalized, you always have to acknowledge. So even if it's a really good, solid, true opinion in this moment, it might not be in the next hour or the next year. Okay. So you have to take that into account always too. The story of the Buddha's awakening, has something to say about this question of spiritual authority. Many of you know the story. The Buddha, he has a great awakening under the Bodhi tree. And when he does, he is approached by Mara and his minions. And Mara tempts him in order to get him off his seat of awakening, if you will, and tries to pull him away. And he is immune to all of the temptations. And finally, after none of those temptations work, Mara asks him, "Who do you think you are?" In a sense, where does your authority come from? Your claim that you alone are the world honored one. You all one are the world. Yeah, who do you think you are? So in response, the Buddha, according to our lore, the Buddha touches the earth with his right hand, and the earth responds, "I am your witness." I love that. In another telling, the earth goddess rose up and confirmed his enlightenment. I love this living expression. And in some tellings, and even I think this is the way that I understood the story previously, it was, the earth confirms my awakening. That's what he was saying with that. But no, actually, he touches the earth, and the earth expresses witness and authority. It's as if reality itself says, this one is fully present. Reality confirms his awakening. This is the ultimate authority. This is the practice that we're surrendering to this authority, the authority of reality. And this is what we all would like, for reality to confirm us. But of course, we have to surrender to reality as assiduously as the Buddha did, rooting out all of the delusions within his own mind that kept him from participating in reality fully. Then that becomes the ultimate authorization. We say in our Zen lineage to put the Buddha seal on yourself. We put the Buddha seal on yourself. I remember hearing Maizumi Roshi speak of this very early. I'd been a resident for just a number of months at Zen Center of Los Angeles, and he spoke about putting the Buddha seal on yourself. And something stirred in me. I can't explain it. But to be to hear that the potential of that self-sealing, that self-validation, was very powerful for me. And that is the promise and the message of our Dharma. That ultimately that is what you do. You stamp the Buddha seal upon yourself. Taking the vows is it's like an early version of this. You're confirming something within yourself in terms of your aspiration and indeed your nature. You may only recognize it dimly, if at all. But that claim that you're making about yourself to the world becomes something that becomes more and more true for you, more and more alive for you. And the authority then arises, from that. But this takes much living and practice to confirm yourself in this. And as part of that process, you question everything and respect everything. You question it from a deep respect. There's a famous koan that speaks to taking on authority that I wanted to share. This is Mumonkan case 40. Isan kicks over the pitcher. So Master Isan was in the 7th generation of Zen teachers, pitchers, going back to Bodhidharma. He studied with Master Hyakujo, the 6th teacher. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I got those numbers wrong. He was a student of Hyakujo. When Master Isan was studying under Hyakujo, he worked as a tenzo at the monastery. Hyakujo wanted to choose an abbot for a Dai-i monastery. He told the head monk and all the rest of the disciples to make their Zen presentations, and the ablest one would be sent to found the monastery. Then Hyakujo took a pitcher, placed it on the floor, and asked the question, "This must not be called a pitcher. What do you call it?" The head monk said, "It cannot be called a wooden sandal." Hyakujo then asked Isan. Isan walked up, kicked over the pitcher, and left. Hyakujo said, "The head monk has been defeated by Isan," so Isan was ordered to start the monastery. So a little backstory here helps to flesh this out. Isan was the Tenzo of the monastery, and he'd been with Hyakujo for a number of years. Isan took the Buddhist vows when he was 15 years old and started studying with Hyakujo when he was 23. And this event takes place a number of years later as Isan is deemed worthy to start his own monastery. So it's unclear, the record doesn't say exactly what date this was, but obviously some years after he had been with Hyakujo, because Hyakujo wanted Isan to take over the monastery, although he didn't tell him that. The head monk, whose name was Zenkatsu, was considered the front runner and the likely person to go and start a new monastery. But Hyakujo set up this test, this public test, as a way to publicly show where authority should be transferred. So the head monk, Zenkatsu, he gives a pretty decent Zen response to the testing question. You do not call this a pitcher, what do you call it? Well, he doesn't say, I don't call it a pitcher, and he doesn't call it a pitcher, because that's falling right into the trap. So he says, I wouldn't call it a wooden sandal. So it sort of comes in sideways. And he's understanding form and emptiness. And it's a decent, it's a decent response. And in fact, Zenkatsu goes on years later to become a very powerful teacher, but not quite mature enough at this point, because Isan comes up and kicks over the pitcher and goes back to the kitchen to fulfill his Tenzo duties. So in this kicking over the pitcher, there's a recognition that it's a very spontaneous and it's a very alive presentation of, I'm not playing any games around authority. I don't need to take over this monastery. Perhaps I don't even want to take over this monastery. So we're gonna cut right through this game. Okay. So the forms of spiritual authority, make me abbot, just like that's not what the Dharma is. A living expression of life in the moment. Zenkaku is his name. Zenkaku, you could tell that he wanted the job. He wanted to be sent off as the abbot. And in fact, the record shows that as the head monk, he was curious why he wasn't given the job before the test. So we know that he did want it. And this is where the trouble came in. This is how, in a sense, Isan knew that he wasn't ready for it because he wanted it. So he hadn't really gotten through any sort of attachments to power or ego. There was something there for him. And Isan showed that he didn't have any attachments to those things. Now, Isan, I do want to make sure to appreciate, Isan was a very dedicated Zen student and a very dedicated student of Hyakujo. So while this might seem horribly disrespectful in one way, it's coming from someone who has been a dedicated, devoted servant of the Dharma and of his Sangha and teacher for many years, even from a young age. So this was just an expression about this particular situation. He didn't go, this whole business is a joke and, leave. He went back to the kitchen to make dinner. So we really need to understand the specificity of his expression here. You can you can really disagree with someone, and you can really say, that's nothing. But don't hold on to that either. Maintain your vows, maintain your own aspiration for what you want. We can go too far in the direction of rejecting authority, as well as too far in the direction of accepting blindly or otherwise authority. So I want to say a little bit more here at the end about koan study, or dokusan in general, actually. Because this is a place where this question of authority comes up in a very lively way for many Zen students. The whole process of coming in and presenting a koan and then being passed or not, most people have some kind of strong feelings about that, about the process, about the the authority of the teacher to pass, and what that brings up in the student. It can be very disturbing. And the particular power relation that is perhaps implied or perhaps manifested in this process, is one that's very troubling. So I want to, just talk about it a little bit to appreciate it more. Dokusan is more like a dance. It's an exchange. And yes, there's an approval, that's happening on the part of the teacher, in the sense of, I see that you see the essence of the matter here. You've expressed it. But all I'm doing really is mirroring to you what you're presenting from my own empty mirror. So the dokusan's a chance for you to just see what's reflected in emptiness. And if there's something getting in the way of your understanding, then I'm reflecting that back to you. Now, I might not tell you what that is in words. Sometimes I can tell you what it is in words. I can sense and see that there's something getting in the way of your understanding in the matter at hand. So that's my role there. There's a perspective and a quality of presence that, in a sense, you're sounding yourself off against, and you're getting a signal back. Okay, and there's some authority in that, because I'm present in, the space of that koan. So that's where that comes from. If I say, keep working on it, or move on to the next one, then I can tell that you've joined me in that space. We're going. And it's wonderful to be validated in that way. In fact, it's essential to be validated in that way, because usually I would say maybe often or sometimes, sometimes, you don't know, it's your own understanding of the koan, of the matter, isn't fully grounded. It could be somewhat clear, but maybe not entirely clear and not entirely grounded. And then to have the teacher validate that, you see it. It's a very important kind of dialogical part of the process to ground it even more fully in your experience, to give you the confidence that you do see it. Yeah, and this applies to koan, to other work as well, shikantaza, or just kind of the life koans that some of you bring me. You know, it's not simplified to you get it or you don't at all. It's that, oh, you know, I see that you are finding yourself present in a deep level of reality, of perhaps, you know, ambiguity and intimacy with this matter at hand. And then for you to hear that is incredibly empowering. Yeah. So it's really important to, you know, not take the, you don't pass it, keep working on it. You know, you don't take those too heavy, and you don't take you see it, move on to the next one too heavy. You just continue with the dance and just continue exploring in your own experience the matter. And I know we all get, we all want to progress and deepen in our practice. You know, that's natural. Those of you who are doing koans, you want to advance in koans. That's natural. And that's okay. You know, there can be some encouragement and inspiration in doing that. It's okay. I was motivated to do that. But what helped me a lot was just giving up any idea of how fast I was going to go or how quickly I was going to finish them. I just said, well, okay, whenever, maybe years. And I just put it years. And then I just spent however much time with every column. You know, it was needed until my teacher passed me. And sometimes that was an hour, and sometimes it was 6 months. It's the unknowingness of that journey. Yeah, but that confirmation is important. It's important to get from your teacher. It's important to get from your Dharma brothers and sisters when they can recognize and appreciate you landing in reality in a helpful way. And then ultimately, it's important to get that from reality itself, so that the earth goddess, you step up and say, I witness the awakening.